Welcome, my fellow conservatives who love McClendon Chisholm as much as I do. Happy Saturday. I'm Robert Steinhagen. I'm glad that you're back with me again today. It is going to be an interesting topic for today, which is the candidate, William Dahl, who has been basically reporting to people that he is the candidate that is going to be bringing common sense to city council. In fact, if you go into the Rockwall Herald banner yesterday, you'll see his ad that was placed in there. It's on the second page, I believe, second or third page. And what's interesting about it is he says he's your conservative candidate bringing common sense to city council. And today I'm going to be focusing on what's not so commonsensical about Mr. Dahl. And it really is, today I'm going to be presenting you with empirical, irrefutable evidence of fact to support what I'm saying. But I also want to focus on just the issue of common sense. What is common sense? Because when Mr. Dahl moved into McClendon Chisholm, of course, he's not from McClendon. He moved in last year. He's not originally from Texas. I believe he's from California. And when he moved here last year, he decided late last year in November to celebrate. He and his family are Hindu. They decided to celebrate Diwali, which is the festival of lights. And of course, no one in our community has any problem with that. That's a wonderful celebration and a wonderful faith to really celebrate. And but what Mr. Dahl did not do is let his neighbors in either Brushy Creek or Quail Creek, which is where he and I live. He lives in my neighborhood. Didn't let them know that he was going to be shooting off a massive fireworks display. And when I say massive, I mean massive. Now, Quail Creek is known throughout the city for having one of the best fireworks communities. You sit out on your driveway and watch some incredible shows because neighbors, they spend thousands of dollars in shooting off fireworks. It's something that I support. I actually have opposed any restriction on limiting those who have an acre or more shooting fireworks because, as I've said before, ordinances like that don't do anything to actually change the behavior of stupid people. Because the reason when Gary Moody and Steve Hatfield and Jack Pullen were in office, they tried to create a fireworks ban. And the reason why is because there were some stupid people acting irresponsibly and caused harm. Well, the problem is, if we had an ordinance in place, those same stupid people would still be doing the same thing. They would still be shooting off fireworks, but the people who do so responsibly, they're the ones who would be hurt. I'm from Houston, Texas. I grew up there. I was born there, raised there, and every 4th of July or New Year's, you could count on someone in our neighborhood, or many people, in our neighborhood shooting off fireworks. But fireworks hasn't been allowed in Houston, the city limits of Houston, Texas, for as long as I have been alive. Doesn't stop stupid people from doing stupid things. And what it does do is it causes law enforcement to have to chase their tail trying to stop those who are in the process of shooting these fireworks off. And ironically, they have to actually see someone in the act of violating the law before they can fine them. And there's no arrest that takes place. They confiscate it, they give them a fine, and the number of fines that are handed out every year in every city are quite consistent. There's not a lot of them. That's the one consistent thing about the number of fines that are put out. And so I don't have a problem with Mr. Dahl and his family shooting off fireworks, having a big party. What I had a problem with, and what most in Brushy Creek and Quail Creek had a problem with, was he didn't tell anybody that he was doing it. This is late at night. We're in bed. many of us, including me, have dogs that are deathly afraid of fireworks. I have a rescue dog named Wagner that was, if you saw his intake picture, you would literally weep. I mean, this is an abused dog. He was incredibly malnourished. It's pictures that I won't even show because they're so awful. But he is honestly, and I've always had labs, he is the sweetest lab I've ever had in my life. And that's saying a lot when you consider, and those who know me, I've always had labs. We have 2 labs now, Wagner and Dobby. Dobby is my daughter's lab, and they're both chocolates. Well, Wagner, I've had him, I guess, about 2 years now, and the first 4th of July, I had no idea that he was so afraid of fireworks, and I got an education real quick. And so whenever the 4th of July comes up or New Year's, I know to prepare. I know to put Wagner in a safe room in an area where it's quiet, and I put on a television so that he's immune from those sounds. There's other neighbors like me who have the same situation, and who, in one instance, one of our neighbor's dogs ran away, and because they weren't ready for it, they couldn't prepare because their dog was just as frightened as Wagner, but that dog ran away. They lost their little white dog. And all you have to do, and common sense would tell you, that if I'm going to shoot off fireworks in November, and I'm going to, and it wasn't a small display. They put some money into it. It was a great display. The problem is that it was very loud. It did shake houses, which is unusual even in our community. And if you ask the neighbors in Quail Creek or Brushy Creek, we're all saying, I know right now, those of you who are watching, you're going, yes, that is absolutely right. I had one of my favorite neighbors. And I talked about him last show. He is a Bernie supporter. He and I are diametric opposites on the political philosophical spectrum, but he and I get along so well. We both don't see eye to eye on anything when it comes to political philosophy, but we respect one another. That's the beauty of discourse. We should be able to disagree. We should be able to not see eye to eye and be civil to one another. And of course, he and I are very civil. We get along great. And but the one thing about him is that I will say is he is one of the most disarming men that you'll ever meet. He is a very winsome is the word I would use for him. He's very calm, his approach to arguments are reasoned. And I know that my fellow conservatives may have a problem with me saying that a liberal has reasoned arguments. He has reasoned arguments. I can say that. And he's a very soft-spoken, gentle man, a gentle man. Now, he just retired, and when I saw him a few days after that, he said that his wife had to restrain him from going over to the Dahl's house and banging on his door to tell him to stop this nonsense. And for him to say that should speak volumes. William Dahl wants to bring common sense to the city of McClendon-Chisholm, but he has no common sense. Common sense would say, hey, I'm going to be shooting off fireworks. I'm going to alert my neighbors. Hey, this is what time I'm going to do it. We'll be done here. It's going to be a big party. I'm going to have loud music. I know this is unusual for this community, but remember, he just moved here. I guess he doesn't understand the rules. Well, I have a question for you. Those of you who are from out of state like Mr. Dahl, when you drove through the state line of Texas, I'm just curious, did you have to stop? Did a state trooper stop you and hand you a stack of the laws of the state of Texas and said, and say, before you can move here, you have to read all of our laws and then sign at the end saying that I agree to live by those standards. Well, of course not, right? I mean, that no state does that. When you moved into Rockwall County or McClendon-Chisholm, no one came to your door and said, hey, before you can move here, before you can be here, you need to read our laws. You need to agree to abide by them and sign there that says I'm going to live by this standard. No, of course not, because laws are irrespective of ignorance. Ignorance of the law excuses no man. And so if you don't understand or know what a law is, it doesn't matter. Officer, I didn't know I couldn't go 50 miles an hour in this school zone. I didn't know that was a law. I didn't know that the posted speed limit was that it says 20. I didn't know that you had to abide by that. A police officer is not going to go, oh, you didn't understand. Oh, okay. Hey, no problem. That's no problem at all. We'll forget the ticket. Of course not. Common sense would tell you that. Well, when my wife and I, when we moved into McClendon-Chisholm, we looked for houses for about 3 years. We own our house outright, and we're Dave Ramsey type people. We do everything with cash. Like I said, I'm not just a conservative philosophically, but applicably too. And so we're very careful with money. And when we were looking, we went to Heath, we went to Royce City, Fate, Rowlett, and different areas of Rockwall County. And every time we went into a neighborhood, because neither my wife nor I, we'd lived in the same house in White Rock Lake for 18 years. Neither of us had ever grown up in an HOA environment. So we knew that whenever we would go into a neighborhood, one of the first things that we would seek is, what are the rules? What are the restrictions? And our realtor our real estate agent would get us a copy of what's known as the Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, CC&Rs. And those of you who live in an HOA, you know what these are. You're familiar with them. You should be, because you signed them when you bought your home. CC&Rs, first word is covenant. Now, it's interesting that just like most laws, covenant comes from the Bible. And many of the laws in this nation are established, actually come from the Bible. And the word covenant is a biblical term. It means a one-sided promise. It means that I'm going to promise this irrespective of how you live or what you choose to do. And so a covenant, like for instance in the Bible, when God said, I'll never flood the earth again, he made a covenant with man, and he signified it with a rainbow. Those of us who believe the Bible, as I do. And that covenant was from God to man, regardless of how man behaves. So it is a one-sided promise. That's what a covenant is. And that's where you get the term covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And CC&Rs are true for almost every development in Rockwall. One thing that I learned from the survey is that any development that has, I believe, 10 houses or more must have an HOA. And that's a good thing, because unfortunately, we have small pockets in our community, very small, where there are a few homes and the streets are in disrepair, and there's no cooperation among the neighbors to work to fix the streets, because those who are at the front end of the streets, they're willing to repair their part, but they don't want to have to repair the rest of it. And so the ordinance that requires this is a city ordinance. Well, when the Dahls bought their home in Quail Creek, just like my wife and I, we looked at the CC&Rs. We looked at that. And the great thing about being and living in this great nation is we can choose where we want to live and where we don't want to live. And when we looked at the CC&Rs, when I went through them and I looked at all of the restrictions, because again, I've never lived in an HOA. I didn't know how it really worked. I got educated, because I'm about to make the largest investment of our family's life. And when my wife and I purchased this house, we decided that we wanted to make sure that we could live by the standards of the community. That if we were going to sign this covenant, we understood that it was regardless of how everyone else lived. And so those covenants are clear. And when when the paperwork is signed to purchase the house, you have to sign that document, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or you cannot live in Quail Creek. You cannot live in Brushy Creek or Sonoma Verde or Mira Vista. You cannot live in Kingsbridge or Chisholm Crossing. You have to sign those covenants. It means that you agree. It's your promise. It's your word. It's your standard. What's interesting is in our community, just, I believe, 2 houses down from the Dahls live a wonderful old couple. And I'm not going to share their names. They're from Czechoslovakia, and that's where he's from, and they have very thick accents. And this is a guy who hates the HOA. And I know this because he told me he hates the HOA. Every time I see him, he reminds me, I hate the HOA. I hate the HOA. Because one of the things that happened when he moved in was he built a metal shed. And he put it in his backyard. In the HOA, we have restrictions against metal sheds. And so he got a notice from the HOA that says, you can't have a metal shed. Well, he was spitting nails. He was spitting nails. He was so mad. And he explained, he said, I didn't like that restriction, but he said, I signed that covenant. I signed that CC&Rs. I said that I would do that, so I've got to honor my word. So he took his metal shed down. And if you look in his backyard now, he has a brick garage that is 3 times the size of that metal shed. And I asked him, do you like your garage better than the shed? He goes, oh, of course. So in the end, he's happier, and the community in our neighborhood is happier because it really adds to the property value to have the outbuildings and things that we have in our community. They have to be of brick or stone, and it keeps and holds the value of our property in check. So when I came to Quail Creek, one of the things that was going on at the time was there was a lot of turmoil because, and I'm not going to go into the weeds on this one, but I will maybe in a different show. But one of the things that was going on was we had an HOA leadership that was basically violating our CC&Rs. The president of the HOA had a boat on his trailer stored on his driveway, which is not okay. It's against the restriction to have a boat on trailer for more than 48 hours, I believe. And but he had it out there for months. Long story short, I became the he basically resigned. So did the vice president. So did the secretary. They all resigned after. And I'll go into this in a different show. And I was appointed the HOA president. Sound familiar? Then I was elected the HOA president. One of the things that we did was we looked at the CC&Rs and recognized that in 2012, the state legislature made massive changes to HOA law. Those changes were there to benefit homeowners over HOAs. So it gave homeowners a great deal more rights and restricted HOAs a little bit more. There's several hoops that HOAs have to jump through now. And in light of that, because at the time this legislation had passed, we recognized that the CC&Rs were out of compliance with state law, were very cumbersome to understand. It included wording regarding the developer, which, because we were at full build out, there was no developer. So there was a lot of things that we needed to do because we had situations come up where homeowners were confused about something, and we had to have a book about this thick to refer to Texas law to see if that restriction or that issue is still valid. And so we set out on an 8-month project to revamp our CC&Rs and our bylaws. We put, for that to occur, you have to have 67% of property owners agree to that, to those changes. 67%, not 67% of a quorum, a true 67% of property owners. So if you don't vote on those, then that is a no vote. So you can see it is a very high threshold that an HOA, that the community homeowners have to overcome to make changes to CC&Rs and bylaws. So we knew that we were going on an uphill battle. Also, we had a divided neighborhood, and I set out to bring us back together. One of the things that I focused on was reminding homeowners that the role of the HOA was not to enforce the law. It was to hold homeowners accountable to the promises that they made when they signed the covenants. That's our responsibility as an HOA board. And the state of Texas has afforded the HOA some great tools through the court for those who choose not to live by the standards that they said they would live by when they moved into the community. And so we set out to update our CC&Rs. It took a good 8 months to do that. We first put the matter before the HOA at our annual meeting, whether or not we wanted to do that, and put a ballot initiative out for everyone to consider, and we did that. Also at that meeting, we offered the opportunity for homeowners to submit changes to the HOA, to the CC&Rs that were material changes. So what we were proposing was just to bring the CC&Rs into compliance, to get rid of the superfluous information about developer language, things like that, make it more readable, but keep everything intact just the way it is. We did have 3 homeowners who came out and said that they would like to see some changes. One of them was to allow trash cans to be stored outside the garage and not inside the garage. A second proposal was to allow signs, because at the time, if your kid played baseball at Heath High School, you couldn't have a sign that said, "My kid plays baseball at Heath High School." We had a sign restriction, and we wanted and there was a proposal to change that. The third one was that someone said they wanted to change the standard that where you could store your boat and trailer on your driveway. All 3 of those passed to be put on the ballot, which they were. And 2 of those, and long story short, we were successful in updating our CC&Rs. We held the ballot initiative. It passed. Our CC&Rs are in compliance with state law. They are easy to read. Our bylaws were updated. One of the things I did was, as president, I took away the authority of the president as CEO. I gave that authority to the body, to the collective board, which is what I did when I was mayor of McClendon-Chisholm. I did not hold tight that CEO position. I believed in the power and the wisdom of the collective of the city council. And so these are the things that we did. The 3 initiatives the three amendments, proposed amendments that went before the homeowners, 2 of them passed. The sign restriction, you can now put signs out, and you can now store your trash can outside of your garage. The one restriction that failed, it actually failed by more than 67%, to give you a sense of how the homeowners say this is the standard we want to live by, was the boat issue. If you have a boat, you have to store it off-site or in your garage. That was a non-negotiable. Clearly, the support by our homeowners was unmistakable. So the Dahls move in, they sign the CC&Rs, and they do 2 things. they build a metal shed and they store their boat in their driveway and on a pad just inside their gate. And so I'm not on the board, but I know because of the process that you have to go through, because of all the things that I did as president, updating the HOA law. After I was president, after I got off the board, just I believe last year, our HOA got a management company. And so management companies are professionals. They understand the rules of law. They understand the processes that are necessary to go through. And so I can tell basically that just by observing that the boat sat in his driveway for about 4 months, which is about the amount of time that it takes for the first notice and second notice to come out, then a formal letter of you got to move it. And that process clearly went on because all of a sudden one day the boat was gone. And when I hearkened back, I thought, well, that must be 4 months. So obviously the board and the management company is doing their job. I've never approached the board of directors of our HOA about either of these issues. The second one was the shed, a metal shed, and that has remained. What's fascinating to me, so as I calculate the amount of time, there was like 4 months went by, and then instead of getting rid of the shed as required by HOA standards, the Mr. Dahl made his shed disappear. You see this? This is his backyard, and that's his shed has not been removed, but it's disappeared. You see, there is no shed back there. No, and I kind of think about what could have been going on in that discussion with the HOA and the Dahls, because you kind of go you kind of can tell what's going on there. They say, well, you need to remove your shed. Well, what shed? Well, the shed right there. Well, that's not a shed. Oh, that's not a shed. Are you sure? Yeah, that's not a shed. No, that's not a shed. It's gone. It's disappeared. I've camouflaged it. You can't see a shed there. This is the mindset of someone who says they want to bring common sense to McClendon Chisholm. This is how this kind of works, I guess, with the Dahls. And so then you have just after, obviously this must have happened. I can tell basically on timeline, but I've got some more something else, some more information or some more things to show you here. This is the other thing Mr. Dahl does. He parks his van in kind of catty corner, so you can't. Not only is the shed gone, disappeared, you can't see it because he's camouflaged it, but he puts his van kind of parks it in a way so that you really can't see that it's there, and that way he can say, well, what van? I don't know what van you're talking about. So this is common sense. William Dahl bringing common sense to the city council. Now, here's what happened. Here's what happened in January. And so when I saw this, I thought, well, this is good, because obviously he's gotten the word and he's going to do the right thing. He posted to a social media site. And you know what? Before I do this, I want to read this. But before I do, we need to set the stage correctly, because I'm going to tell you this. What you're about to hear, what I'm about to read for you, is going to break your heart. It really will. And we need the right mood for this, because this is going to be hard to hear. I'm warning you right now. Get your tissues out, because this is going to be tough, and just know that you've been warned. William Dahl writes, beautiful outdoor shed. Arrow 10 by 12 metal shed. Our HOA will not allow us to keep it, despite making it wonderfully nice. I covered the entire building with faux English ivy. What would Father O'Donegan say? Why didn't you use peat from Ireland? Sorry, I digress. We've got to have the music. There it is. Thank you. We also painted the doors a nice soft green to match the ivy. We have about $1,000 into this project and hate to see it leave. My loss is your gain. It is fully assembled and easier to break down into large sections to transport. You'll need a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver, powered or manual. A small crescent wrencher, similar box wrench. Also, a small needle nose vice grip pliers come in handy as well. It's a beautiful piece, and I want it to go to a good home. Oh, William Dahl wants to bring common sense to McClendon Chisholm, and this is, I guess, this is his idea of common sense. Just so you know, the picture that I had taken of that van, I went out this morning just to see if the shed's still there, if the van's still there, and yes, all of that is still there. As I've said before, you can't fix stupid, but this man wants to be your city councilman. This is a man who has no respect for the law, has no respect for his neighbors, and but wants to be able to make laws that restrict your freedoms and your rights. Folks, he's running against Adrienne Balcom, a person who has demonstrated that by her actions that she is actually a true conservative. She has demonstrated that she really does mean what she says. In this election, Mr. Dahl has been ingratiating himself with the Republican Party, trying to go to Republican events, trying to show pictures on his Facebook wall with Republican officials. But a wolf in sheep's clothing is what he is. He is not a Republican. Or if he is a Republican, he's certainly not a conservative. This election, as I've said yesterday, I focused on the fact that this is all about money. It is about a development that is coming into our city that we can stop if we keep the conservative majority on the city council. They only need one vote. And if you choose not to vote for either David Day or Adrienne Balcom or Scott Turnbull, in my opinion, there is no question about what the next domino to fall is. So remember, there is a true conservative running. There are 3 of them: Adrienne Balcom, Scott Turnbull, and David Day. Please, do you judge people by their actions or their words? That's the question that I keep asking, and unfortunately, too many people really don't judge people by their actions. They judge them by their words. They're going to tell you they're conservatives. Mr. Dahl put it in the paper there. He's a conservative, but if there's anything he has neither common sense nor a sense of conservatism. So I'm going to urge you again to please go out and vote for the conservatives and support them, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to this YouTube channel. This way you can get notified when I do new shows and they're posted. So we will see you tomorrow for a special show, especially for veterans and patriots of McClendon Chisholm. I hope you have a great Saturday. God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow.